All right. This is my starting template. It's super important to create a starting template for yourself. This would take so long to start every single time from scratch. So no matter what anybody says, you should either work on evolving a starting template or just create one that you can at least edit in a faster manner than starting from scratch. EQ. So your stock EQ actually, for the most part, is just fine. It will work just good, or it will work really well for 99% of the stuff you're going to need. And in fact, a lot of people just use the stock EQ. So if you are in that camp, there is definitely some truth to that. But I use the stock EQ in Bitwig all the time. So stock EQ is great. Some other options, the isotope ozone. So the isotope ozone EQ can do mid-side, and I'm sure a lot of the other things that I'm not going to remember to list right now. But the most important thing is mid-side. The isotope ozone EQ can do mid-side treatment, and that is super important. We won't really delve into that a lot more right now, but it is very important. So that is definitely one to get if your native option cannot do mid-side, or you can't mangle some sort of band splitter or something to affect something that's really wide. I might want to, anyway, okay, go ahead. Let's skip that. I'm going on a tangent about how important that is, but it's we'll save that for later. So yeah, isotope EQ, super good, and it's free, so definitely take a look at that. And honestly, I can't remember the one I have. We'll go into the box later, I'm sure, and I'll pull it up, but I definitely would take a look at either a free or paid dynamic option, because even if you don't really believe in that, or rather, if you don't really want to use that as one of your tools, I would still honestly just have it in the toolbox anyway. Unless you're trying to do something really cool with analog EQs or something like that, you need to be using a parametric EQ. And for your main sourced one, I think a lot of the times with modern DAWs nowadays, this won't be a problem, but you need to be making sure that you have at least, I'd say like 4 or 5 bands, 6 bands, something like that. Definitely, I think 3 is a little too low. There's definitely some reasons to be using old school slider style EQs, like more analog. They're not really visual, they're just sliders. And also some could argue that The visual could harm you in a certain sense if you're trying to do more of that just a hearing workflow and not a visual workflow. You're not really caring how that waveform or that frequency spectrum or whatnot is looking. You're just wanting to know if it's, oh, it's got too much bass, it's got too much treble. I can pinpoint that's 400 hertz, 500 hertz, whatever. It's not visual. I think that in modern production, you can squeeze that in or find a use for that, but just for someone who is just getting their feet wet into music production, honestly, parametric EQ, and this goes for pretty much all of your use is going to be pretty much a parametric EQ, unless you're trying to get some sort of analog quality or whatnot, or in terms of mixing your instruments and your effects and your FX and whatnot. Your parametric EQ is going to set you up good. I have not really found, in my experience, a real use to use a analog style EQ. Now, I do really like to use a Pultec, like a mastering EQ. There's some analog EQs that are more towards the mastering or flavor side, and you can fit those in that way. But those are not really precision EQs or surgical quality EQs or whatever you want to call it. They're not going to be really workhorse EQs. The parametric EQ or the visual EQ or a banded EQ or however you want to say it, as long as you can see a frequency spectrum representation of your sound, and then basically all the modern style parametric EQs, like you see, like the Fruity Loops one, Bitwig one, Ableton one, the ones that have, it's a line and you'll have your circles that are essentially where you're going to affect the sound with a certain type of curve, and yeah, if they look like that, you are in a good spot. Parametric EQ is a must. Yeah, and then honestly, you would be pretty set. There is linear phase EQs and different stuff, in my opinion, especially for a beginner and even for an intermediate. A lot of the stock EQs and also third-party EQs that you're going to find, they're going to be pretty phase. They're going to be pretty cool with phase. They're going to be pretty whatever you want to say. They're going to be pretty all right with phase. So honestly, even for the mastering, it's probably cool to use a mastering EQ if you can muster up one. And the only difference between a mastering EQ and a normal EQ is that a mastering EQ is a lot more gentle. When you are mastering, you are supposed to be doing as far as frequency treatment, you're supposed to not really be doing all that much. I mean, the choice is yours, but that's what mastering EQs essentially are. The difference between a mastering EQ and a parametric, or difference between a mastering EQ and a non-mastering EQ is that a mastering EQ is a lot more gentle. So not really super important. We will definitely go over that in more detail later. If you do not have a mastering EQ, you can be gentle with a normal EQ and you will be just fine. And a mastering EQ, there's plenty of free ones on the internet and also some great paid options. You can take a look into that, but I would have one. If you don't have one, just use a normal EQ, you'll be fine. And just be gentle with it. And we'll go over mastering and why I'm saying that in a future video. So yeah, that's really it for EQs. To sum it up, your stock EQ, your stock parametric EQ that's at least like 4, 5, 6 bands, whatever, not 3 bands, is going to be your best friend. Isotope EQ is super free and super sick, and it can do mid-side, and that's super important. A dynamic option is super important, whether that's soothed, smooth operator, whatever. There's one that's really popular right now that I have, and it's pretty simple. We can go in the box and I'll tell you what that's called, but and that's more of an actual true dynamic EQ in the terms of what we're trying to talk about, not really a frequency tamer. But anyways, yeah, get a dynamic EQ. All your EQs essentially are going to be parametric EQ in the modern day. You can fit in analog EQs if you want, like Pultex and stuff like that. Precision or surgical EQs that are more of that analog style slider. But honestly, parametric EQ is the future and the way to go, and the other stuff is old and it's cool, but for workhorse stuff, I mean, I use both, but workhorse stuff, parametric EQ is going to be the way to go. And with that all being said, kind of a little bit out of order, but mastering EQ, you also going to want to have that as well eventually.
What's up, motherfuckers?
I'm writing with an open palm because I'm eating fries and I don't want to get this marker dirty. Compressor. Compression. Compression.
So, compression. Honestly, this one's going to be kind of short and simple. With compression, as long as you can see what's going on, because it's such a foreign concept when you're beginning, that's what's most important to me, at least, with a compressor. As well as you could also slide some cheeky OTT in there as well, because that's you know. You're probably doing all right. Stock is usually not visual. You're wrong, but I think my compression game really stepped up when I picked up a visual compressor. Visual. My game really stepped up when I picked up a visual compressor, because I could actually. Compressor was the biggest thing because it helped me learn what a compressor is actually doing. Which, in short, compression is essentially modulating the volume. And this is more of just we'll go into the box. This is more of a overview with the whiteboard and everything. But I think for right now, the most important thing is make sure your compressor is visual. If it's not, you can still learn with a non-visual compressor. I think it's a little bit harder. But when there's a will, there's a way. That really helped me out a lot. Other than that, your stock one should be fine. And also, you're going to want a compressor eventually. You're going to want and eventually you might want a multi-band compressor, but I'm not going to write it on here because, in my opinion, multi-band compression is super in the category of if you would like to use it. I don't think you actually need a multi-band compressor, especially for a beginner. But some may say that's wrong. Some might say that's wrong, but I don't think so. But yeah, so anyways, just make sure your compressor is visual. You can always use a band splitter or mangle it into being a multi-band compressor. But I think in your toolbox as a beginner or even an intermediate producer, if you don't really know what compression is, definitely make sure it's a visual one at least so you can see what you're doing instead of just working in the dark. Yep. So the next category is going to be reverb. Essentially, so there's a little talk around town right now that all you need is stock reverb. Reverb's just the same. Why do you need anything else other than the stock reverb? Well, first of all, a lot of stock reverbs you might not be able to EQ the reverbs tail or the reverb's effect, or with the sound that the reverb is creating, the response of the reverb plugin, the reverb itself. In my opinion, it's really nice to be able to EQ said reverb effect itself, meaning that when I apply an EQ, it's not affecting the source sound, it's affecting the sound of the reverb solely. That meaning, if I take the low end out with an EQ of the reverb, it's not affecting the source sound, it's only affecting the actual reverb. So for example, if you can imagine someone yelling into a really large hall, if somehow you could take the bass out of just that echo or that sound that's coming from their voice that's bouncing off the walls, if you could just affect the low end or high end or mid frequency or whatever, if you could just do that to just that sound itself and not what's coming out the mouth, that would be essentially what we're talking about when we say EQable with the reverb. Other than that, your stock reverb probably is pretty good. I would say there is different types of reverbs. There's spring reverbs, there's halls, there's plates, there's hybrid reverbs that are a combination, and it gets really fancy and crazy. But I will say that this notion of you only need your stock reverb is true, but there are some reverbs that have different sounds to them. As kind of cliche as that sounds, there are some reverbs that just sound nicer than other reverbs, and you might be able to mangle, or even if it's EQable, EQ it to sound the way you want the reverb itself. But there was more to the story. I think that the statement that why are you bothering with it? It's just a reverb. I think the whole statement of it's just a reverb is total horseshit. That's not a real thing. I think if someone says that, you should not listen to them, at least for that. Maybe other things too. But yeah, if what they're trying to say is that, stick with the stock reverb, or I don't think that's. Anyways, I can't imagine. From what I've heard, it's like you only really need stock reverb, and again, that blanket statement of it's just a reverb. Like, why are you going crazy with the reverb? I think that's bad advice, and yeah, they should be ashamed of themselves for giving that advice, especially if they consider themselves any sort of professional, because there's reverbs that you would have to do crazy stuff to a stock reverb to get that reverb to sound like the third-party reverb. So don't listen to that. Third-party reverbs are cool. Alrighty, on to the next one. Hey, yo. Alright.
Clipper is going to be our next section of VST. If you don't have one, the kilohertz one is one I found to be really good, and it's free.
Alrighty, so yep, if you don't have a clipper, the kilohertz one is free. What is a clipper and why would we want one? Again, we're going to the box later, but a clipper essentially is going to shave off the peak of your sound. The very peak or the ceiling that you set it at, it's going to shave anything that's going to hit above that ceiling. And what that's useful for is essentially oftentimes a lot of sounds will have transients that aren't actually benefiting the sound in any way. It's just taking up unnecessary headroom, and if you shave that off, in essence, if you shave it off, depending on what you're trying to do, you can essentially shave that peak off without a noticeable difference in the context of the song, or you can shave it off in a way where it creates some sort of distortion or some sort of brick walling at that ceiling where it can create a desired effect. And that's essentially the difference between soft clipping and hard clipping. Soft clipping, in essence, is trying to do the more invisible way, and hard clipping is doing the less invisible way, where it's creating noise in replacement for that shaving in some sort of fashion, as a replacement or as an effect, or because of. Yeah, so the kilohertz one is free. Honestly, there's a lot of great clippers out there. The kilohertz one is one I'm using over in Bitwig. It's kind of a Bitwig exclusive one, so this one's kind of just a what do you say, a honorable mention. The over plugin, native plugin in Bitwig is a good one to look into, and also, since this is an honorable mention, kind of in the mastering realm, in the mastering realm, over and peak limiter and stock Bitwig is kind of a goated beginning stock mastering little solution, but we'll go over that in another time or in the future because it's kind of off topic. But yeah, the next one we're going to be going over is saturation. Super, 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 super important. Saturation. Another word for that is an exciter. Essentially what that's doing is it's exciting or it's affecting saturation. We'll do a whole video about saturation. It is so important. But like in color, when a color is more saturated, it's more vibrant, it's more alive. Saturation is kind of the same concept in music production. It is making the sound more vibrant and alive in a way. It's very specific though. Once you work with saturation a lot, you'll be able to start to hear saturation. Kind of like compression, it can be kind of scary for beginning people or for beginning producers to incorporate in beginning production, but it is very important, saturation. Honestly, I think you should just get Fab Filter Saturn. Because it has a sick multi-band feature, which kind of funnily enough, I owned Saturn for a long time, and I didn't know I had a multi-band feature. It's really cool and important. But Fab Filter Saturn is, in my opinion, the best saturator I have found, and it's also super versatile. It can be any sort of saturator you would really want. It's super clean. It never has given me any trouble with anything that I've done correctly with it. It's done it just awesomely, no phase issues or anything like that. Especially when I'm using the multi-band section appropriately. So Fab Filter Saturn is a great one. You can do some research on some other free ones, and your stock DAW. You can do some research on some other free ones. Your stock DAW should have a stock saturator, but take a deep, hard look at Fab Filter Saturn, in my opinion. And then if I find one that's like Fab Filter Saturn or better, we'll discuss that. I have used other ones and I have ditched them all because Fab Filter Saturn is just the go-to. I'll use chow tape sometimes, but honestly, most of the time, Fab Filter Saturn is so versatile. It can be anything you want as far as a saturator. So, in my opinion, it would just be. All right, limiter. Honestly, your stock one's probably pretty good. Fab Filter. Pro L2 is really good. Let me actually write that legibly. Alright. Yeah, Fab Filter Pro L2 is really good. And also, kind of funnily enough, I haven't tried many other ones except for the peak limiter, over combo, and Bitwig, and the Fat Filter Pro L2, which is fantastic as well. Fat Filter makes some really good stuff. Barricade, audio damage, or we'll go over the brand when we get in the box. But Barricade 4, honestly, I had this one, and I kind of counted it out. It's a compressor limiter combo. It has some really neat features, and I've actually recently really fell in love with it. It's really good as well. And actually, I was using Pro L2 on the trial. I was using Pro L2 on the trial. Only I didn't buy it. They have a really nice 90-day free trial. I own Saturn, but I don't own Pro L2. But when that ran out, I ran back to Barricade before, and it's actually really good. I'm liking it a lot, so that's one to take a look at as well.
Alrighty, so that's going to be the end of the video. It's a little bit out of order, I think, but a little bit nervous. And yeah, it's just a simple overview of our simple tools, the basic tools I think you'll need when you're starting out, and maybe a little insight into some tools you wouldn't think that you would need to be using. And in the next video, we'll definitely be going into the box and the starting template and showing you why starting template is so important and why you shouldn't be starting from scratch every single time, and why your workflow is so important. Because obviously at the end of the day you want to be making music. So yeah, I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. It's kind of cool to get on the whiteboard, for a little bit. But I think next one will just be a little bit more traditional and focused. So yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.